notice of trustee sale. This is when things are a lot more serious. All right. So the 90-day notice of default window has gone by. And then now the lender files notice of trustee sale. And once they file this, there's a minimum of 25 days that must go by in order for them to then auction off the property. A lot of times when they file this, they'll file this 30 days out. Sometimes they'll file it 60 days out because they're trying to work something out with the borrower. Depends on how, again, your communications with them, depends on what kind of lender they are, depends on what kind of property it is, but they cannot do the trustee sale under 25 days. It has to be 25 days or beyond, state of California, right? So now the stakes are higher. And this is why I talked about the NOD phase being the best phase to potentially work out a deal, because now, in that phase, you are you don't have this 25-day, aggressive timeline on your back that's going to create a lot of stress, right? You have a stressful situation for sure, but now we can work through it. Once you hit NTS, notice the trustee sale, now it gets really stressful, and some of the options may be limited. All right. So you want to try to, once you hit this spot, if you're in this situation, you got to really dial it. It is not over. And one thing you got to understand, it's not over till it's over. All right. So you got to fight here. A lot of people, I've seen it over and over again. I've just seen people at this stage give up. Don't be that person, because there's options. The more options you're aware of, the more energy that you can utilize to solve your situation, right? Even if it looks bleak, even if it looks like there is no other way, usually there always is another way. You just can't see it because of the stress. All right. Now, let's break it down. I broke down, okay, limited time to sell or secure financing. So now, especially if you're in commercial deal, a lot of commercial traditional acquisition loans are going to take 60 to 75 days to close. So once you get to NTS, very, very difficult to take that kind of a deal. If you do take that deal, you have to negotiate with your lender. And this is why, if you've been in communication and have a good relationship with them, then they will be more inclined to work with you. If you just go dark on them, they don't hear from you, then it's going to be tough, And I listen, I know this is difficult, and that's why I'm keeping to say that, because you may need some support to help you go through this. It's not just easy to pick up the phone and call somebody when things aren't going well. All right. Now, this is when, that being the case, that you need some help here. You need to be working with a broker in one way or another, either list your property or to negotiate with the lender. Now, you can also work with attorneys and do all this. Attorneys are a lot more expensive. See, brokers, we don't require upfront money. We get paid when the deal's sold, unless you work with us as a consultant. That's where there may be some upfront money, very minimal though, compared to what a attorney would charge, right? But you do need some help at this stage, unless you're a grizzled veteran and you've been through this a bunch of times. But even then, I really think that you could benefit from getting a professional involved, especially because you don't have a lot of time to do whatever it is that you're going to do. And then if you have somebody who is a professional, they can maybe see some things that you haven't been able to see. Maybe they can advise you on some things you haven't been able to think through. All right. That's why that is very, very important. Now, a lender will postpone the auction if they believe that you're going to get this property sold, you're going to get this property refinanced, you're going to get you're going to get them paid off. You can bring the loan current. That's why you got to have backup, and that's why you have to have a good relationship with them. Now, I didn't put this option on there because I really don't think it's an option, but this is when people at the last minute file bankruptcy to prevent the lender from foreclosing on the property. Right? That bankruptcy is not a real solution to the problem, but it does prevent the lender from immediately taking the property. It just creates a lot of other issues for you. I won't go too much into that, but if you are going to do that, you would do it at the NTS stage, right at the last minute, before you worked anything out with the lender. I'm advocating for you to come up with a solution, a strategy, a game plan before you get to that point. Not a fun process, right? So hopefully we can work something out before without you having to do that, right? And if we follow some of the steps here, you can solve your situation without having to file a BK. Right? Now, buyers and investors. All right. This is a chance for you to work something out, but you gotta have either the resources to make this happen, or you have to have a creative strategy to get something done. Because in NTS phase, you gotta move quick. All right. And here's what I'm just saying is you need cash or quick financing for deals. So what cash meaning that hey, you actually have the cash in the bank that you can wire, or you have here I say quick financing, that means private money, hard money, and private investors where you can move quickly. Because a lot of times you just don't have time to get a conventional loan. Unless you can work with the owner and you guys can schedule out a time to, well, you can postpone the trustee sale. You just don't have time to close a regular loan. All right. And I've seen it. I've seen it. I've been in contract, especially I learned this the hard way back in the day. All right. In 2010, 2011, working deals, even short sales or regular sales that were in notice of trustee sale phase where we had a deal. We were in the escrow. I even had short sales where the lenders approved the short sale. We were in escrow. They approved the date when we were closing and they still foreclosed, right? And I've seen it here recently on a couple of agent deals where they had a contract and they were in escrow, it was legitimate escrow, but lender just didn't postpone the sale and they foreclosed while the escrow was happening, and that really sucks for everybody involved, right? And a big part of that is look, when you're in NTS, you typically got to have cash or private money because you got to move quick. Now, another option is subject to, where you come in, you bring the mortgage current, and you take over the seller's property subject to the existing financing. Now, this is not the creative financing webinar. That'll be another one we do. But what essentially a high level summary of what a subject to deal is the deed transfers at close of escrow. This is all done through escrow, title insurance. The buyer gets the deed, seller relinquishes the deed. However, the loan stays in the seller's name, right? It doesn't go to the buyer's name. So this is not a formal assumption. So there's elements of risk because when a loan is given, they have what's called a due on sale clause, meaning that when the property is sold, that loan is due. They got to pay it off, right? This is a subject to is a legal, let me just reiterate that this is a legal process. And if you look at the California contract, whether it's for a home or for income property, there's a box when it comes to the financing section that says subject to. You can check the box. So this is a legal process done through escrow, but the element of risk is that the lender does not approve it. So if the lender catches wind that the deal was done, they could call the loan. What does that mean? They could say, I'm foreclosing on you all unless we get paid off, right? However, rarely do they do that. And this is an excellent, strategy to take over a property quickly, especially if you got 10 days trying to work a deal out. Hey, you can just bring all the money to bring it current, take over the mortgage, put some money in the seller's pocket or have them carry their equity either way. And then you can say, hey, look, I can refinance this thing in 60 to 90 days. Or usually once you own it, you're probably going to take 6 to 12 months, but you can refinance it in a quick period of time. That's a solution. That is a way for you as a buyer to get in on a deal, solve a problem for a seller, utilize some creative financing, buy yourself time to then refinance. Because if you're trying to do a notice of trustee sale deal, and with the 60 to 30 to 60-day loan, a lot of times you just don't have enough. You just don't have enough time to get it closed. And I hate to see you going through an escrow and you pay for your inspections, you pay for your appraisal, and then they foreclose on you. They foreclose on the seller, and you're trying to buy it, right? That's really bad for everybody involved. That's why we have to take these measures up front while I'm kind of drilling down on this. All right. Hope everybody gets that because these first two stages are the best possible stages where we can make a deal for buyer and seller to solve problems, right? And I really want to, I think I've said it multiple times. I keep saying it. If you can figure this thing out of how to solve problems for sellers as a buyer, your deal flow will absolutely increase. And as you know, if you're an active buyer, finding great deals is tough, right? You really, it's like a business in and of itself. You really got to, and I say as a broker, so I tell my agents every week we have meetings. It's like, look, your number one business you run in the real estate business is finding deals, whether it's foreclosure or regular. I mean, you have to always be finding deals, whether that's manually prospecting or marketing and networking, whatever. You got to be in that loop. Well, if you're an investor, same thing. If you develop that relationship of a problem solver, your deal flow will go up, the amount of deals that come to you, right?